Hi, it's Maria from Maria Tells a Story and Still Dreaming Homestead. I'm sorry I missed last night, so I'm going to read the story today. And this is from The Legend of the White Raccoon, for the DJ Dillon series by Lee Roddy. Chapter 12, The Truth About the White Raccoon. DJ tried to pray, but he could not. His closed eyes were scalding with unshed tears. His mouth was dry. His heart sunk in the back of his throat. He could hardly swallow. His chest hurt as if a boulder was slowly settling on it. Then DJ heard something. At first it was so faint he didn't really notice it through his pain, but the sound grew louder and came closer. It was a familiar sound, a chirr, not shrill like a grasshopper's trill. It was softer and deeper. DJ had heard such chirring countless times, yet somehow this time it was different. He slowly opened his eyes and brushed a gloved hand across his hot tears that burned partway down his right cheek. A little while ago, the night was as black as night that DJ had ever seen, but there was now a faint glow everywhere. Enough snow had fallen so that the earth, brush, rocks, limbs, they all shimmered with a strange light. This was the sight the boys had seen with every new snowfall. He decided long ago that it must be the moon somehow filtering through the gray clouds with just enough light to make the whole earth seem alive. Everything glowed with a pale, strange, yet beautiful light. Then part of the whiteness moved against the blackness of the night. DJ blinked and sat upright. That wasn't possible. Snow couldn't move. But it happened again. He picked up the flashlight and snapped it on. The end of the beam reflected a pair of animal eyes that glowed like live coals. The boy stared, seeing only the eyes. Then, against the new fallen snow, he made out the shape of an animal. The white raccoon! DJ whispered the words in disbelief. A legend had become real right in front of his own eyes. Or was it? DJ clicked the light off and let his eyes again adjust in the darkness. At first, a brightness in his eyes kept him from seeing, but he heard the chirring sound again, and then his eyes adjusted to the night. He couldn't see the raccoon's eyes, but he saw the animal move. DJ snapped the light back on. The albino raccoon was real. The eyes reflected brightly back. The light beam showed the ringed tail and familiar mask of the animal's face, yet it was different. The tail rings were pale, almost a tan color. The mask was not black, but a light blonde. The rest of the head, body, and tail were as white as any albino could be. For a moment, the marvel of the moment overwhelmed DJ, and he whispered, "Alfred, it's the white raccoon, see?" Then the terrible truth hit DJ, and the cruel pains of loss ripped through his heart. He sank down again against the rock. The flashlight sagged, and the lens landed in the soft new snow. DJ closed his eyes to keep back the hot tears that threatened to burn through his head. It was so unfair. The legendary raccoon was alive, and Alfred was dead. The churring sound came again. DJ ignored it. his mind jumping back through the times he and Alfred had heard that special noise that raccoons make. Once the boy had seen a whole family of raccoons coming out of a tree. Alfred and DJ had thought about taking one of the younger coons for a pet, but they decided against it. DJ forced the good memory away and opened his eyes. The white raccoon was only a few feet away. DJ picked up the flashlight and snapped the beam onto the albino. Its eyes reflected the light. Then the albino turned away and moved uphill through the new snow. DJ saw the familiar paw prints left behind. They were almost like a child's handprint in the snow. DJ didn't move. The albino turned back, its eyes blazing brightly. "Go away," the boy said. "You didn't exist while Alfred was alive. I don't want to see you without him." The raccoon's small mouth opened, and the animal called again. DJ stood up abruptly and waved his hands. "Shoo! Go on!" The ringtail moved a few feet, then stopped, looking back at DJ. The boy stamped his feet against the ground to scare the raccoon away. It drew its legs under its body as though to run, but it didn't. The boy took a step toward the raccoon. It turned again and waddled slowly up the hill, away from the river. DJ stopped. So did the albino. A funny feeling began at the back of the boy's neck. He felt the short hairs there begin to crinkle and rise like the hair on a dog's back when it was frightened. DJ took another step towards the albino. The flashlight beam showed the snowflakes falling faster and harder. The raccoon turned away. The boy stopped. The ringtail turned to face him in the snow. Shivers ran down DJ's neck, across both shoulders, and on down his arms. He felt goosebumps leaping up over his chest and legs. "It's almost as if he wants me to..." DJ broke off his thoughts. "Nah, that's crazy." Still, after a moment's pause, DJ found himself taking a step towards the rare animal. It turned and moved away, not running, not trying to escape, just staying about the same distance from DJ. It moved inland as before, leaving dainty prints in the snow. Goose flesh, I call those goosebumps, was crawling up and down DJ's arms when the raccoon scrambled up a small downed sugar pine log. The boy's flashlight caught the glowing eyes for a moment. Then the animal jumped down to the other side of the log. DJ saw the dry boughs move, then stop. He stepped upon the log and flipped the light around. The paw prints led into the darkness. DJ lifted the beam, following the prints, looking for the white raccoon. It was gone. The tracks had simply stopped, as though the albino had vanished in midair. But just beyond the log, DJ saw something sprawled in the snow. He tipped the flashlight toward it, then sucked in his breath hard. "Alfred!" DJ yelled in glad surprise. He ran forward to bend over his best friend. Alfred's clothes were wet. A big bump showed through the plastered hair against his forehead. He looked different without his thick glasses. DJ knelt in the snow and tucked the flashlight under his left arm so the light shone right in Alfred's face. Quickly, DJ reached for Alfred's wrist to check for a pulse. As DJ lifted his friend's hand, a weak voice said, "I see you got my note. What took you so long?" "You're alive!" DJ jumped off and pulled off his coat to throw over his friend. "Of course I'm alive. I've got a terrible headache, though. Slipped on a rock after I crawled out of the river and cracked my head when Sky chased me. Must have passed out." DJ tucked the coat around his friend. You're soaking wet. This will keep you from freezing. Good thing you came along, Alfred said, his teeth chattering. I could have died here. I fell in the river trying to save that Sky guy. DJ remembered the man. DJ suddenly remembered the man. DJ snapped the light around. Where is he now? Over there. Alfred's hand moved weakly up the hillside. DJ flipped the beam past the brush and the trees away from the river. Something reflected off of metal. DJ stopped the light. A belt buckle sparkled weakly about 6 feet up in the air. A strand of wire glistened from the top of a young fir tree. At the end of the noose, Sky hung upside down between the sky and the earth. DJ stared. He's caught in one of his own snares. Serves him right, Alfred said with a soft chuckle. The man yelled, Get me down, you hear? DJ stood up and smiled. We'll call the deputies and they can get you down. DJ tucked the flashlight under his left armpit and cupped his hands. Brother Paul! Corporal Brackett! Deputy Humble! Help! Help! There was an answering call from the trees. Several lights flashed up the hill to the boys' left. DJ aimed his light towards the man. Over here! Hurry! Alfred's been hurt! DJ bent over his friend again. You're going to be okay, Alfred. They're coming. Thank God everything's going to be okay. It wasn't long before everyone huddled around a big black heating stove in the small cabin where Sky had kept Cletus. Sky sat in handcuffs against one wall. Alfred was bundled warmly near the stove. Corporal Brackett had used his handset to radio for a helicopter to pick Alfred up in the morning. Cletus had already given his statements to the officers. Now it was Alfred's turn. The deputy poised his pen over a notebook. Start from the beginning, please, Alfred. You found my note, he began. He explained that he had recognized Cletus' picture from a milk carton. Seeing Sky alone in town and not realizing the kidnapped boy was inside the pool hall, Alfred decided to take his dogs and go rescue Cletus from Devil's Slide Canyon. It was a dumb thing to do, Alfred continued. He pushed his glasses higher on his nose. I mean, going down there by myself, knowing Sky was a child stealer. Anyway, Sky caught me in the woods with my dogs. Then he tied them up behind the cabin and me inside with Cletus here. Everyone looked at the kidnapped boy, who nodded in agreement. Corporal Brackett finished making notes and looked up at Alfred again. Go on, please. Then Sky said he'd have to take me with him and Cletus and get out of here before the law came. He said he'd leave my dogs behind, but running loose. That way people would think maybe I drowned or something, and nobody would really ever know what happened to me. DJ turned to frown at Sky, but he didn't look up. Alfred went on with his statement. But I had done one right thing. Before I started down here, I went into a public telephone booth at the little store and called the missing kids hotline. I talked to what they called a technical assistant. He listened to what I said and promised to follow through. So even if Sky here had gotten away with me and Cletus, the trail would have been pretty hot. Cletus cleared his throat. Tell them how you got away, Alfred. Well, Sky tied me up over there where he is now. And when all of you were trying to find the cabin, and one of you accidentally set off the trip wire alarm system. Deputy Humboldt grinned sheepishly and petted the brown head of the Rottweiler scent dog. I did that. Good thing, Alfred said with a grin. When that happened and Skye slipped outside to investigate, Cleotis untied me. Actually, I'd already gotten one hand free while Skye was in the cabin. So I took a flashlight and eased out the back door, trying to escape. I got to the riverbank and hid. I could hear all of you men and DJ in the distance. I wanted to cry out, but in the darkness I didn't know how close Skye was to me, so I didn't dare make any noise. Then Skye found DJ, and I heard them running through the darkness. After a while, I couldn't hear any more. DJ said, I think I know what happened then. Corporal Brackett nodded but said, please let Alfred finish his statement first. I was hiding by the river when I heard Skye fall into that deep pool, but I couldn't let him drown, so I held a pole out to him. He grabbed it, but when I tried to pull him in, the limb broke. I fell in. The current caught both of us and swept us downstream. The water at the curve in the river swung us both back to the shore. Would you believe Scub grabbed up my club and started chasing me? I ran back up this way, wet, freezing, slipping, and sliding in the snow. DJ interrupted. I thought you drowned, Alfred. I had seen you trying to save Skye, and then when I couldn't find you or him, the corporal glanced at DJ, and he stopped in mid-sentence. Alfred finished his story. I guess Skye was so anxious to catch me that he forgot about setting that snare. Anyway, he got caught in it. But before I could call out to you, I slipped in the snow and cracked my head. You know the rest. For the first time, Brother Paul spoke. His deep, rumbling voice filled the little cabin. Now, if you all don't mind, I think it's time to say thanks to our Lord for the way this all turned out. DJ felt all warm inside. He nodded and bowed his head. A few days later, DJ and Alfred were sitting in Brother Paul's sedan. It was parked on the shoulder of a rural road next to the little creek where the Dillons used to live before Dad and Two Mom got married. The sun was shining on about 10 inches of new snow. Almost all the oak trees and a few cottonwoods seemed to have a skirt of broken limbs on the ground. The weight of the heavy snow, wet snow, had piled up and snapped the strong boughs. But the whole world was beautiful and clean and bright. Alfred was a hero. Everyone said so. He'd helped save Cleotis. People said DJ had saved Alfred's life. DJ was glad that Alfred was alive. DJ hummed happily and lowered his pencil to the lined notebook on his lap. Alfred looked up from his book. Thought of another one, DJ? DJ nodded, writing quickly. How about those men from the church building Grandpa's house for him? Isn't that worth counting? Alfred turned to look across the creek. The sound of hammering came clearly through the crisp autumn air. Sure is. Brother Paul says the men expect to have your grandfather's house ready before Thanksgiving. DJ nodded, thinking how strange it was that the new house would be exactly like the old one they'd lived in so long before when his mother was alive. But then, was it really so strange? That reminded him of something. Stranger, DJ exclaimed, scribbling again. I'm counting Grandpa's new dog. Two Moms said Stranger could stay with us until Grandpa's house is ready. Now he's got a companion, and that stray's got a home. The boys were silent a moment as DJ reviewed a list of good things in his life. It was surprising how many blessings there were, and yet DJ had almost forgotten them. I'm going to pause here for just a minute. That's a good idea. That something all of us can do. We can write a list or have someone help us write a list of good things every day that have happened to us. And then when we go through some hard times, that list will be ready and we can look at it and remember. He exclaimed, "Alfred, Brother Paul's right. If you look down at the mud of trouble, you sure can't be looking up and counting God's stars." Alfred grinned. "Sure looks different today from what it did a few days ago. Skye's in jail. Cletus is back with his parents. My little brother's dog is fine, and so is mine. And I've got you for a friend. And I'm not one of those missing children, even though I had a close call. Hey, maybe I should make up my own blessings list like you." DJ's pencil moved again. "I'm going to list my stepsister and two mom too. Never had a stepsister before, and even though Pris is sometimes a pain, she's really pretty nice. So is two mom." Alfred nodded and changed the subject. "You know, I've been reading everything about legends and rare animals and so forth. There are some pretty wild stories about legendary creatures." DJ glanced at his friend. "Anything as strange as how I saw the white raccoon and found you?" Alfred shook his head. "That's so unbelievable that I'm glad you decided not to tell it to the deputies. I didn't figure they'd believe me. And to tell you the truth, Alfred, sometimes I'm not really sure it even happened. Yet, I know it did." "It's not logical at all," his friend admitted, "but I believe you. Still, I think it should be our secret, at least for a while, don't you?" Alfred grinned. "I don't know. Can any writer ever keep from telling such a thing?" DJ smiled and lightly touched his friend on the shoulder. "Tell you what I'll do, Alfred. I'll write it up for the local newspaper and let the editor decide. If he believes it's true and prints it, then everyone will know about the raccoon and Cletus and Skye and how you got involved. But if the editor doesn't believe it, I'll put the story in the drawer and save it. Maybe someday I'll try selling it to a magazine." Alfred shook his head. "Nope, DJ, it won't work. If it were published, we'd just be laughed at. Nobody's going to believe what really happened, and that's too bad, because I know you could call that story." "What?" "You could call it The Legend of the White Raccoon." "I like it," DJ exclaimed, writing down on his pad. "Let's hope nobody ever catches that albino. It's a cinch if we can't even try after what it did for us. That's for sure. Too bad, probably nobody'll ever believe it," DJ said, chewing on the pencil eraser. "But then you and I know the truth, and so what difference does it make what others think?" "Yeah," Alfred said with a happy grin. "It'll be our secret." The two friends grinned happily at each other as the sound of the building continued across the creek. And that is the end of the story, The Legend of the White Raccoon. So that is exactly what DJ did when, as the years passed, not put it in a magazine, but he put it in one of his books. That's the end of this one. So I hope you enjoyed it. I sure did. Let's see if I can find out what the name of the next book will be. Let's see. So far, we've read The Hair-Pulling Bear Dog, The City Bear's Adventures, Duger the Grasshopper Hound, The Ghost Dog of Stony Ridge, Mad Dog of Lobo Mountain, The Legend of the White Raccoon. Ooh, there are 4 stories left. The next one we'll be reading will be The Mystery of the Black Hole Mine. Black Hole Mine. That sounds interesting. Well, I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you'll be back again. I want to pray blessings on you and yours in your house and out of your house in the day and the night. Whatever you do, keep dreaming and keep a story in your heart. All right, bye-bye.